So best practices for sprint planning, that's our topic for today. So what we will be doing is we will have little introductions, and we had the chatter fall. We learned about each other a little bit. So why sprint planning? We'll first start with that sprint planning. Why it is sprint planning, duration of the planning, and then we will get into the details of the best practices before the sprint planning, during the sprint planning, and after the sprint planning. So we'll cover a lot of those practices, and you may already be doing some of those. So that's all right. And then we will have quiz at the end, a quiz that will be based on the content that we covered today. Okay, and it's a virtual lunch and learn that we do every month. Now we are doing it on Thursdays, and we bring various topics for you. And if you are interested in a topic, let me know. Okay. So and also to make it interactive, I have here Menti going on. So let's do Menti present. Okay. So you go to menti.com and enter this code 81721306. Enter this code. This is wait. Okay, yeah, here it is. This one we should start with. So, what do you expect from this webinar? Go to menti.com. From your phone, tablet, and keep that there. Don't exit. There will be several interaction points using Menti. So just stay there. New ideas and PDU credit. Okay. Learn about best practice, refresher. Okay. Very good. Very good. Best practices, better techniques. Very good. Very good. Refresher, best practices, refresher, ideas, better techniques. Very good. Very good. Best practices. I think that's the kind of a theme. So best practices is a theme. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Let's go back. So about me, many of you have been attending my webinars. So I have more than 30 years of experience in project management and agile. About 10 years ago, I started my own company, RefineM. We do agile transformation, coaching, adoption, project management or process improvement consulting, and lots of trainings on agile and project management leadership. And several of the trainings are mentioned here, the popular ones that we have. And also we have products that are mentioned here, and I will talk a little bit about them in a minute or so. Yeah, here it is. So next webinar is going to be another very interesting topic, slicing and dicing user stories. That will be delivered via projectmanagement.com, and I'm assuming you are all members of PMI. So you should get free access to projectmanagement.com. These seats get filled up very quickly. They have capacity of, I think, 2,000, but that gets filled up. I get a lot of people, thousands of people attend those webinars. So if you are interested in that webinar, register quick. That will be my advice if you want to listen to that webinar. So let's move on. So go back to another mentee question, and let's gauge some sense of um, related to sprint planning. Sorry. So let's say, so does your team conduct sprint planning? Okay, yes, sometimes for some sprints. Okay. Not at all. So most likely, if you are saying not at all, so I'm thinking probably you may not be doing agile, which is okay. Yeah, if you yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Sometimes for some sprints. Okay. Okay. All right. But most of you seems like you do it every sprint. All right. So some of the terms so that everybody is on the same page. So what is a sprint? A time box of typically 2 to 4 weeks during which the Scrum team completes a specified set of work and makes it ready for review. So that's the kind of definition of the sprint planning, the first event in the Scrum that officially kicks off the sprint. So that's the first event. Product backlog is a prioritized list of work. Sprint backlog is a list of work items that the dev team plans to complete in a given sprint. So product backlog and sprint backlog are two different things. Product backlog is everything that the team is expected to do. Sprint backlog is a subset of that team is going to work over next sprint. A user story is a requirement, a brief description of a specific functionality a user needs. So that's the kind of a requirement that the development team need to implement. And the story point is a unit of measure of size and effort associated with a particular story. So those are some of the terminology that is used in the sprint planning. So I wanted to just put it there. And if you have any questions, I think many of you may be familiar or may know these terms already. Okay. So why we need sprint planning? So some of you who do every sprint or sometimes. So why you need what is Silverlight? I don't know. I don't know Silverlight. So if you can explain that a little bit, why sprint planning is needed. Commitment. Yeah. Okay. All right. Commitment. Focus. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Very good. Focus. Identify the work priorities. Organizers approach. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Wow. Okay. A lot of inputs here. Define the goal of the sprint to be systematic. Okay. How much work the team need to do. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Define the goal. Agreement. Okay. Very good. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Let's move on here. So the primary objective of sprint planning is to agree on what the sprint goal is and what work will be performed during the sprint. So those two are different things, right? So what is the goal of the sprint and what work will be performed? So it will answer these three questions. The sprint planning, once you have finished the sprint planning, you should get answer of these three questions. Why this sprint is valuable. So when you talk about agile mindset, it is always focused on value. What is the value of doing it? Why we are doing it? So that comes first. Is it valuable to the customer? is it not valuable? If it is not valuable to the customer, why we are doing it? Okay. So why is this sprint valuable? That's the first answer that the everybody in the team should have. Why, or what is the goal of the sprint? Okay. What can be done? That commitment. Some of you are talking about commitment. So what is the commitment? What work can be done in this sprint? And then the third is, how would the committed work get done? So why, what, how? Okay, why is this sprint valuable? What is the goal? What can be done, or what the team is committing? Okay, so I would like everybody to note that this is a commitment. So when you say, okay, these are the things we are going to do in this sprint, that's a commitment. And many teams forget about that commitment. They feel, okay, whatever we can do in 2 weeks, we will do, and then we'll move the things to the next sprint. That's not commitment. That's not commitment. Commitment is, okay, we said we are going to do this, we will do this. That's the commitment. Now, if that requires the team to work extra hours, they work extra hours, but deliver it. And then they go to retrospective and say, oh, wow, that was too much of work. So they should not be consistently overstretching themselves. They learn from that experience. And in the next sprint, they say, okay, what happened last time? So when we do commitment this time, we take that into account, what happened in the last one, and then we make a new commitment. Not that we make a commitment and keep missing it. Many Scrum teams do that, and that becomes very casual, kind of, oh, we could not do 2 of these stories, let's move to the next one. It becomes a very casual thing, right? So it's a commitment. And how would that commitment be that the team decides together? So I just wanted to make sure that you understand why behind a sprint planning. Okay. So best practices. Let's talk about what the team needs to do before the sprint planning, before even the sprint starts, before even the planning starts, before even sprint planning starts. What are the things that team need to have? First of all, they decide about the time box. Okay, how much should be the how much should be the sprint planning? Should last. Normally, for a 2-week sprint, maximum is 4 hours, and in that much time, with a team of 10-12 people, you should be able to finish your 2-week sprint planning. And when you get better, typically teams will have 1 to 2 hours. Typically, team will have 1 to 2 hours, but if your team is 10-12 people, sometimes teams are very small, like 3-4 people. But if your team is a little larger, of course, larger teams are not recommended. The usual size is 5 to 9. So if you have 9 people, 9-10 people, probably it may take 2-3 hours. Maximum is 4 hours. So you basically time box how much the sprint planning should be. Okay, and then the team works with product owner to make sure the backlog is fully refined and groomed leading into the sprint planning. And that's that ownership for this piece of work is with the product owner. So team works with product owner, but the accountability of backlog fully groomed before the sprint is product owner's accountability. Okay, so it's not a Scrum Master. So Scrum Master may facilitate, may say, okay, we will have 1 to 2 grooming sessions every week. And they may schedule the session, and they may go into the session, they may invite the people, but it is product owner to make sure there are enough stories groomed in the backlog for the next sprint. And usually a best practice is that you should groom 2 times the stories that a team usually will take in a sprint. So if their velocity, which is how many story points they can finish, is 40, then you should have at least 80 story point worth of stories groomed in the product backlog before you come to the sprint planning. So that's something that many teams don't do that. And the result is that the grooming has to happen, detailing has to happen, right? So if it doesn't happen before, then it happens after or during the sprint or after the sprint planning. It happens during the sprint, and then you find surprises. And those surprises lead to not meeting the commitment. So this is important, that before the sprint planning, the backlog should be fully groomed. And what is the meaning of fully groomed? So if a backlog item does not meet its definition of ready, okay, a definition of ready, ready has come 2 times, okay, it's ready, okay, okay, all right. So so every team has definition of done, they should also have definition of ready. How do you know that story is fully groomed? What criteria it should satisfy? So let's have a little chat conversation here. So what are the kind of things, and you can put that in the chat. What kind of things, or what is the kind of definition of ready, if anyone has it? Does anybody have the definition of ready in their teams? Do they have definition of ready? And this is also a joint effort, and you can communicate through the chat box. Acceptance criteria defined. Yes, that's one of the things can be worked on immediately. What does that mean? Can be worked on immediately. Is it no dependencies? Okay. All right. Very good. No dependencies. What else? Should it be all requirements understood? How do you know that? Should it have estimate? Should it have estimates? Requirement defined. Okay. Should it have estimates before you go to sprint planning? So that's one of the things that, and a definition of ready is so important. And you need to task estimated. Okay. So, all right. So some kind of an estimates are there. Okay. So usually product owner and the team together will work on decide the definition of ready, similar to how the team decides definition of done. Very similar to that. They will decide together. And Scrum Masters, if any Scrum Master is here, Scrum Master should make sure that a team has a definition of ready, agreeable definition of ready, and they understand it and they follow it. So that's something is the definition of ready. Now the team capacity, Patty, you have put together, let us think going through the next sprint. That may not be the definition of ready. Definition of ready is associated with each story, like you have definition of done associated with each story. So each story in the backlog that should be going into the sprint, moving from product backlog to sprint backlog, should fulfill the definition of ready. Then only it can be taken in the sprint. Otherwise, it cannot be. Like that, every story that meets the definition of done can be closed. Similarly, any story that meets the definition of ready can be taken into the sprint. So definition of ready is very, very important. And there There are checklists that you can use, like you have definition of done. So this is all happening. This all need to happen before the sprint planning begins. Okay, so let's move on, and there's some more. Team needs to know their velocity and capacity. Okay, so how do you know how much work you can take? You need to know your velocity, and many teams, take the average of last 3 velocities, or the velocities from last 3 sprint. So if you have velocity of 30, 40, and 50 in the last, I'm just talking about, so your next sprint target velocity should be 40. Okay, so you can take average of that. And also, so velocity is how much team produced in the average in the last 3 sprints. And then also you need to know the capacity of the team. And capacity in that term, sometimes, people take off and they are not, or they may not be able to spend time because they're busy somewhere else, or there's a holiday coming. So your capacity may go up and down. And I have developed a capacity planning tool, capacity planning sheet. And if you go on the website, my website, and the knowledge base, where you have the templates, you can download this from there and use it. And I found it to be very, very useful. I use it for my consulting work. I was called in at least two times, where the challenge was the team was not able to meet their commitment. They will plan but may not deliver. They will plan and they were working hard. It was not that they were not working. So and what they were doing is that they were doing the velocity assumption, but they were not looking at their capacity. So this spreadsheet is very good in knowing your capacity. So you need to know your velocity, and also you need to know your capacity. And then also what you need to do is to reserve some capacity, around 20%, maybe anything from 10 to 30% for ad hoc and exceptions and potential non-sprint work. So for example, if somebody has to go for a training, somebody were called in a meeting, somebody has to work on a production issue that popped up, something that is not for not the product development part. So and teams maybe they are supporting the applications, the current applications that are running in production. So if you don't think about those, because those things will come, they will not be sitting in your backlog. They could be sitting in your backlog if they were not emergency fixes. But you get emergency fixes. You may get emergency fixes. So how do you take care of it? Or something all of a sudden came and somebody got pulled. Okay. Or if you have to reserve some time for fixing defects. So that 20% capacity can be kept for doing those kind of work, and then remaining 80% that should be used to set up the sprint goal and commitments. So that's the best practice. And you look at your past 3-4 sprints and see how much of this kind of work the team did. And then based on that, you can decide if 20% is too much, maybe 10%. And if you think 20% is too less, then maybe more. So 20%, I'm just giving a high level guideline, but you decide how you're going to work through this. All right. So that is all we do before the meeting. Then during the sprint planning meeting, what do you do during the sprint planning meeting? So first of all, team estimates each item, breaks it down into tasks as needed. So you have done some level of estimates before coming in the air, and then if you have to break it down, then you break the things down and then estimate it. Most of the times, what teams do is they take the stories and break that down into tasks. For example, we still have teams where the people have, different skills. Like there is a person who does UI, there is a person or persons who do development work or coding work. There are people who do the testing work, just those three. There may be some business analysts, doing the detailing of the business requirements and all that. So there are different people with different skills. They could come together and join hands in the Scrum team, and the story goes from the development to to UI to testing and all those kind of things. It goes from one person to the other person. So how do you track who is working on it and who has completed their part? So sometimes teams break that into tasks. So there is a UI task, there is a development task, there is a QA task, there is a BA task, whatever that is. So something and breaks them into tasks, and all those tasks are under the story. So when all those tasks are done, then the story is complete. And there is possibility that maybe two people can be working on that two tasks at the same time. And it also helps in validating the estimate. Let's say the story was estimated before the sprint planning, and then you came and broke it into tasks. You can validate that still that is valid or not. So that is helpful in committing and then achieving that commitment. And in many cases, teams don't do it, and then they run into different kind of problems. So that will be helpful to do some detailed level, split and estimation. And then based on the product owner maybe saying, okay, these are the high prioritized item, we want to take this into the sprint. And so what is the goal? Of course, it will be to complete all those stories, but the goal is different. Okay, in this sprint, we are enhancing the UI for this feature. Okay, that could be a goal. So many teams don't write goals. Many teams don't write goals. They are not very clear. They know what stories or tasks are included in the sprint, but they don't talk about the goals. They don't talk about the value. And I have seen, this is very surprising, but it is a reality that we talk about value, but when it comes to looking at the sprint contents, what team is going to work on, there is a effort estimate or there is a size estimate, but you don't know what's the value of that. And nobody even talks about that. So do you know you're working on the right thing? Just because the product owner said that we should be working on it. That's one thing. One product owner is saying, okay, these are the priority, and product owner is the person who represents the client. But do we know what's the value of it? And I have not seen that. So defining the sprint goal is important, and that will bring some light on the value part. So if you start talking, once again, if you're a Scrum Master or a product owner role you are playing, or even if a team member, it's okay. You can next sprint planning for your sprint. Okay, what's the goal of this sprint? And see what answers you get. Oh, we are going to complete this story. Okay, that's fine. That's the scope of the sprint. This is what we are going to do, or that is the sprint backlog. What is the goal? What we are trying to achieve through this sprint? What value we are going to deliver to the customer through this sprint? Okay, so that defining the team goal, that happens in the sprint. And also the team should include at least one retrospective action item in the current sprint backlog. Many teams do retrospective, but then they list down the action items, but then they don't have time for that action item. So guess what? You are doing retrospective, you are identifying your action item, but you're not taking action on those action items, right? So you don't see improvement. Okay. And slowly what will happen, that people will lose interest in retrospective. So we talk about it, but then we don't have time to do any improvements. Okay, so unless you create time for improvement, improvement will not happen. And this is the time. This is the time. So when do you do sprint planning? You take one action item from the retrospective. You just finished retrospective for the previous sprint. You might have noted down a couple of action items, if not more. Pick one of them. Prioritize those action items, pick one of them, and include in this sprint. And if that action item is that it may take more than a sprint, well, break it into multiple items to include in the subsequent sprints. So that's very important. The team should at least have one action item in the current sprint that they would like to work on. They have to create time for it. Nobody from outside is going to come. And this is again the responsibility of a Scrum Master to make sure that this item is included. The team should be aware of it, but if the product owner misses it or the team misses it, then the Scrum Master need to make, because the Scrum Master is the owner of a Scrum or the process. He or she is a subject matter of a sprint, and this is one of the best practice that should be put in place. So Scrum Master is the person who need to make sure that team follows best practices. So if no action item was included, then they should include an action item and maybe push a low priority task or a story outside the sprint. Maybe we'll take it up in the next sprint. But one action item need to go in the sprint. I have not seen that happen. And that is so important. Otherwise, teams are not continuously improving. Okay. You learn from retrospective, you spend maybe 30 minutes or an hour, whatever time you spent on that retrospective. But if you're not learning, then there is no use of it. Okay. So what else has to happen? Determine target velocity based on last 3 sprints and 80% capacity utilization guideline. That's what we talked about, that what was the average velocity for the last 3 sprints, and 80% or whatever is your capacity you're reserving. So based on that, determine your target velocity, that the team will deliver 47 story points. Okay. So that is what you determine, what is going to be your story point, and then create and review the burn down chart and make sure the goal is achievable. So look at your burn down chart from the previous sprint. How does this look like, and how the new chart looks like? So the burn down chart, the planned line, which is usually a gray line. If you're using Jira, some other tools will have a different color. So you can see that, okay, this is what it looks like. Are we able to achieve this? So the actual line that is coming, based on how much we finish every day, is it going to be closer? And if it is not, then probably you have to see what you need to do. Okay. So you need to review the burn down chart also during the sprint planning. Refine the sprint goal based on velocity and burn down as needed. So if you have to go back and defining the scope, defining the goals is an iterative process within the sprint. So you go ahead, start with what you want to do from the product owner perspective, look at, break that into task if you need to, and validate if you can finish it. And then once again, go back and look at your target velocity and see, oh, we can do only this much, or yeah, we can do some more. Okay. And then look at your burn down. So this is a way within that 1 to 2 hours of meeting. It is going on it very interactively or iteratively. Update sprint backlog in the tool, whatever you're using, and document decisions. So that happens during the meeting. And then after the meeting, team uses pull method to pick stories from the top of the backlog and start working on a story at a time. One story, one person at a time. One story, one person at a time, right? Unless you're divided into tasks, maybe then there are two tasks, the two people are working simultaneously, which is fine. But if they are doing it, they are also working on one story at a time. Okay. Each team member should report progress on his or her story in real time. So as soon as they finish their part, they should update that story on whatever tool, Jira or Trello or whatever they're using in real time. And if they don't do it real time, then at least at the end of the day, when they are switching off their computer, okay, when they are saying it, okay, it's the end of the day, so maybe 5 minutes before there, go and update what you did. And even if you have not completed it, put some, little 2 or 3 lines, what did you do, and where you are on that story or task. So that happens after the plenary meeting or during the sprint. Okay, during that 2-week period, this keeps happening, the execution part. Okay, so let's go to Menti, and let's see if you learned anything new today. Anything new that you were not aware of? So we talked about what you need to do, why sprint planning is needed, reminder to include that. Okay, very good. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. We talked about why, definition of ready. Yeah, importance of velocity. Nothing new, but need to get the team to identify retrospective. Yeah, that I have found missing many times. That is something missing. Ensure business value. Very good. Very good. Yeah, business value, the goal of the sprint, and what value the team is going to deliver. Yeah, what value the team is, what we need before. Yeah, okay. Okay, very good. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, and this is the kind of objective of these webinars, that you come to the webinar and maybe if you learn one thing, that's good enough. And you get PDU, and that's good enough. That's good enough. Okay, let's go back. Okay, I know that I must plan the sprint well before, during, and after the sprint planning to ensure the sprint goals are okay. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Team has just started about wanting to identify the sprint goal. We'll do that next. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Okay, let's come back here. So we are talking about this part. So now I was telling about the quiz. Okay, so stay where you are in Menti, and the quiz will start. So if you want to join the quiz now. Okay, I have so far 5 people, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very good. 11, and 12. Very good. Very good. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, so others may want to watch, and that's perfectly fine. So let's get started with the quiz. And remember, you have to answer correct and answer fast. Oops, sorry. Okay, so everybody answered it correctly. Excellent. Let's see who answered it fastest. Okay, Earthman, whosoever he or she is. Okay, some of you are right, some of you are not right. Okay, all right. So let's see how this changes. Okay, Earthman is still leading. All right, very good. Pankaj has moved up. So now we are on the third question. Yeah, we talked about this. Okay, most of you are right. Let's see how does it change the leaderboard. Oh, there are something happening here. Okay, tied up. Pankaj and Earthman are tied up. 26-21. Pankaj, let's see if you can beat Earthman or anybody from below. Okay, the sprint review happens at the end of the sprint. So somebody who put sprint review. Okay, so let's say so Earthman is still leading. Okay, all right, there is some shifts happening. This is the last question. Let's see if something new happens here. Yeah, this is a little confusing. Oh, but everybody got it right. Okay, let's see who was in the terms of speed. Gidget. Let's see if she can upset anything. Oh, wow. Okay, Gidget. She came from behind. So Gidget, you are the winner of the quiz. Please take a screenshot of this and email to me, and I will send you your prize. You can pick any of those that I listed, and here is my email address, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit too. Okay. Now let's go back to a couple of more slides left, and then we'll have Q&A, and I'll open up the so the grooming part, slicing and dicing user stories, as I was talking about, is a very important skill that the team need to have. Okay, particularly the BAs and the developer, everybody need to know how to do this. So that will be on projectmanagement.com. That is our August webinar on August 18. So you can go to projectmanagement.com, or you can go to our website and register. Okay. And then our next PMP exam prep training is coming up. That will go for 4 weeks in September. We do it on half day on Saturday and then 2 hours each on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We constantly get feedback and keep updating how best way to deliver this training. And our success rate has been pretty good. Anybody who appeared have passed. So let's, if you have anybody preparing for the PMP, you can tell about this exam prep class. And you will know how to earn the PDU. You will get the copy of this slide deck. So you should have it with you. And here are some of the trainings that are coming up other than the PMP exam prep. And if you are interested in these trainings, you can go to our website and sign up. Okay, so I have 10 minutes left. Let's see if there are any questions. And I will open up the microphone. So if you want to talk, you can talk. Let's see. How do I unmute? Unmute. Okay. So you can unmute yourself. And if you have any questions, so Mute and okay. Allow participant to unmute. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? You can have it in the chat, or you can ask. Mike, you can unmute your microphone and ask. Any questions? Maria, you want to say anything? Mary?
No questions. Thank you for a good session.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, if you do not have any questions, then maybe we can, I kept this 8 to 10 minutes for the Q&A. And if you do not have questions, then all the best. I hope you learned something from today's webinar that you can apply. And I will see you in our next webinar. Thanks a lot. And I'll be here for another 2-3 minutes if anybody can, anybody wants to ask anything. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.